This is Stefan with TradeAtomy, and in this video we'll look at working with drawing objects and organizing them in the new sidebar. I prepared a chart setup here with 3 charts, a daily chart, a 10,000 tick chart and a 240-minute chart. So it's actually, you don't have to use multiple charts. You can use all the organization with the sidebar and features with only one chart, but a typical use case would be to have multiple charts and have the replication mechanism between the charts. So I add the study on the other charts, and I want to use that to show one example, and that is if you turn off a certain drawing object category. So we don't want to have ellipses on the 10,000 tick charts. And for the 240-minute chart, we also add the study without any specialties. Okay, so now I want to add all the drawing objects. So we have the horizontal line, rectangle at trend line. We add a vertical line, and the vertical line is now not synchronized across the charts, and that is because the default filter for the style is solid, and my default setting for the drawing object is dotted. So I could change it here and set this as a default if that should be my new default, but that's pure TradeStation functionality that has nothing to do with my indicator. But you can set defaults for your drawing objects, so whenever you draw something, then it will come up with the default settings. So we have now horizontal, then we need an ellipsis. I'm gonna put that one here. And now the last one is text objects. So you can write that is our test text. And if you want to change any of the attributes, you can right click the drawing object, and then you have a couple of fast access from the context menu, but the bulk of the settings is always in the edit text or edit rectangle, etc. So if you click that, because the drawing object belongs to an indicator, TradeStation asks you if you want to change the study or the drawing object, and if you click yes, it will open the properties for the indicator. So you have to press no here, and then you get the standard settings for the drawing object. So we come here, we make the font a little bit bigger, say 24, and I change the color. It's good like this. And now we see that all the properties of the drawing objects, they are automatically replicated. For the drawing objects that have prices, you can hold the Alt key and click on the drawing object, and it gives you this edit prices dialog. And here you can fine tune or put specific values for the prices. And that works for the rectangle, horizontal line, trend line, ellipsis. The vertical lines, they don't have a price component, so that doesn't work. And for the text, it has one price, right? And so you can change that from here too. And once the drawing object is adopted by the indicator, all the filter settings don't play any role anymore. So you can feel free to go and change all the settings of the drawing object, even if they don't fit the filter. Once they are adopted, they are there and they will not disappear from here. And the same limitation that the drawing object belongs to an indicator, we have when we try to remove drawing objects. If you use the normal delete key or the right click delete, then TradeStation basically asks you if you want to delete the whole indicator from the chart. And if you press yes here, then the whole indicator is deleted from the chart. So in order to get around that, you can hold the control key and click on a line or a drawing object, and that will delete it. The shortcuts, they can interfere with TradeStation's chart trading. So if you use the chart trading, then please check the video for the expert settings, where you can change the shortcuts for delete and the edit prices dialog. Because if you hold control and click on the chart with chart trading, then you actually place orders, so you don't want that to happen. If we go back to our inputs, we see that we used add sim as a group, and I just want to use the chance while we are here to show what that actually does. So we have now a file here that's called tesla.xml, and there is all the drawing objects, and that means if we would change the symbol here, then we obviously don't see them. So the drawing objects in the Tesla file will only be shown when the group input has the same value, right? So what you could do with this is, if you have like some special strategies or so, and you want to have different sets of data for the same symbol, you could say, I make a new group and I call that sim, say strategy 1. And now, while you're still on the same symbol chart, you have a separate group. So whatever you do here now is only for this group and will not affect the other groups. And what it does is now Tesla underscore strategy 1. So the add sim is always replaced with a symbol on the chart, but you can prefix or suffix it with whatever you want. And you don't even have to use the add sim, but if you don't put the symbol or something in here, then the lines will literally show up on every chart. So if you would do something like this, you would get your drawing objects on any symbol. So I put that back to add sim. And now I want to focus on the sidebar. We have 3 tabs here. We will now focus on the first tab. And we have also a footer here. Here you see the group of the drawing objects, what we just talked about. Then you have a chart ID, and here's just a link to the user manual. And the chart ID is rather important because a lot of data that belongs to the chart is saved under the chart ID. So it will automatically increment. We have chart ID 2, chart ID 3 here. But all the local settings that belong to a chart, and that will be things like display and alerts especially, will be saved with the chart. So typically you can rely on the chart ID being saved, but it's kind of challenging to do that, to identify the chart, that it always can be recognized at chart ID number 1. So I realized when you turn off the indicator, save the workspace and close TradeStation, the chart ID will be lost, because I have no chance to identify that this was the chart that had chart ID number 1. So if you just always close the workspace and have the indicator on, you shouldn't have any difficulties. But if you want to make sure that this chart ID will forever be chart ID number 1, you can also use the input chart ID, and that's exactly the purpose of this. So you can use 1, you could also use another number. You will just get a message if you use a number that's already exists. So we can't use 2 here, for example, because 2 already exists, and also not 3, but you could use 4 or 25 or any other number. So we have this one is already chart ID number 1. So we will give that one chart ID number 1, just to make sure that this chart will always be chart ID number 1. The sidebar itself can be minimized with this button here. So then it would just be very small, collapse to the side, and then you can extend it again by clicking this button. The width of the sidebar can also be changed like this, and this will also be saved. So whenever you restart the chart, it will come up with the same size. And you can also change the docking. There is a default docking that I will also cover that in the expert settings video. But the default is docked to the right, but you could move it around here, but it will always come back with the default setting. So if you want to have it permanently docked on the left side, for example, then you can watch the expert settings video where I explain how to change the docking permanently. In order to hide the sidebar entirely, you can hold Ctrl, Shift and Alt and click somewhere on the chart, and that will just hide the sidebar entirely. And then if you hold again Shift, Ctrl and Alt and click, then it will come back. And you can also set the default here, that's show sidebar, input. If you set this one to false, then the indicator will always load with the sidebar hidden, and that will also be a little bit faster because the sidebar does not have to be drawn, but then you can still turn it on at any time with the shortcut. It will just take a little moment for the first time to create the sidebar and then show it. So this input is really only the default, but you can always hide or show it if you need to. Another input here is the sidebar theme, and you have two options here. You have light and dark, and you can also create your own themes, but I will cover that again in the expert settings video. So now we will have the dark sidebar theme. That's gonna look like this. Okay, I wanna go back and put the settings to the default, work with true, and have the light theme for the sidebar. And then the sidebar itself contains all the drawing objects. They have a little symbol here for the type of the drawing object. Then you see a little preview of the color. So the rectangle here is like a sea green, and if you would actually make the rectangle hollow, then it will switch to the outline of the rectangle. And then every entry here will get a default name. It's typically the object category plus the ID of the drawing object, but you can click this little button here and change the name to whatever you like. So you could type some text here and then you can confirm it with enter, or you press this little button again and then you change the name of that rectangle. The next button is the display icon. So you can hide something, and that is something that is purely local. So you can hide the rectangle here, but it will not be hidden on other charts. So that's like a setting that you can purely use to organize and hide stuff on a specific chart. And then you have the lock symbol, where you can lock drawing objects. That means you can't accidentally move them anymore. That's basically the same that you access from here. It's just a short way to access it. The alerts we will cover in the video about alerts, and this little bin here you can use to delete the drawing objects. Is the same like holding control and clicking the drawing object. Then we have a little gear icon here that is settings for the drawing object, and that again is context sensitive, so it depends on what type of drawing object you click. So the vertical line has only the scroll to feature, while the rectangle has more options. So the first option is edit prices. That's the same like clicking Alt and the drawing object. And then you can extend left and extend right. That is something that you can't do in TradeStation without coding. So this is something that is kind of exclusively available with this indicator, that you can extend rectangles. It works with lines in TradeStation, but for the rectangles you can't use that normally. You don't have any options here from TradeStation to do that. And you have the extend left, right, and then you have a scroll to. The scroll to is interesting when you have like a lot of stuff on your chart, and if you can't find it, you can scroll to, and then the chart will automatically scroll to wherever that drawing object is. For the trend line is very similar to the rectangle. The vertical line we covered already. The ellipsis has no extend options, neither does the text, and the horizontal line only has the edit prices. Then in order to identify the drawing objects, you can click on a drawing object here, and that will animate the drawing object on the chart. And the same works in the reverse, so you can click on the rectangle, then you get a little animation here, and that works for all the different drawing objects. The available buttons here in the toolbar can also be changed. And again, I need to refer to the expert settings chapter video, where I will show how you can either change the order of these buttons here, or you can even remove some. And what we see here on the 10,000 tick chart is that the TrendLines 3 has an orange background. And that means that the drawing object is out of the range of data. So it means we have a start point here of March 1st, and this chart is only starting on the 11th of March. So the drawing object cannot be displayed here because it is out of the range of the chart, and that works in both directions. You have this window settings in TradeStation where you can say how many bars to the right you want to see. So let's say I put this to 10, and now we will see 10 empty bars here, and you can put a trend line or another drawing object into the future here. So now the end date is on the 17th of April, and this 17th of April is not available in the range here and here. So that's another possibility how the drawing object can be out of the range of the chart. The next feature I want to focus on is this plus icon here, and that allows you to draw arrows. Then technically they are texts with a specific TradeStation font that TradeStation provides to create symbols. So when you click here, arrow up, then you get a menu here, and this shows you the different arrows that are available. With the background color will be the same color as the background color of your chart, and you can change the color here and the size, and then choose one of the arrows you would like to have on the chart, and they will be automatically placed on the chart. So for up arrows, they will be on the low of the last bar, and if you put something like a down arrow, that will go to the top of the last bar, and then you can grab them and move them around. As said, they are technically text objects, so you can go here and edit text and change the properties from here as well. But they are designed in a way that you don't really have to do that, and they also get specific names here. A special feature to organize the drawing objects are folders. So you have this folder plus icon in the top, and you can click that and it will create a new folder, assign it again with an ID, and then you can just type your name, this test folder, and confirm with enter. And what we can do now is we can use the assign to folder icon from the drawing objects and move that to a folder. We can create multiple folders. Say we want to put our daily stuff in this folder. We can now assign our drawing objects to folders. And this one goes to the daily folder. And for the folders, you can click the folder, it will open and close the folder contents. And if you click these icons like the display icon or the log icon, they will just be applied to all the drawing objects within the folder. So you could, with one click here, hide the entire folder, and of course unhide it or lock all the objects within the folder or unlock them. And we have a checkbox here that makes the folder the default folder. So if any of the folder has this checkbox clicked, then whenever you put a new drawing object, it will automatically be assigned to this folder. And if you click on the trash can here, it will ask you if you want to delete the entire folder with its content, the folder only. Folder only would just delete the folder, and all the drawing objects will automatically be outside the folder again. And as you can put drawing objects into the folder, you can also move them to another folder from here. So now it's in the test folder, or you can also remove it from the folder and then you have it back in the first hierarchy of the objects here. The last column here allows you to sort the order of the drawing objects here. So if you want to put this one to 60, for example, then it will automatically go to the end of the list. And the folder itself will be in the context of all the first level objects, and then inside the folder is determined only from all the objects that are within the folder. For the folder settings, there are templates, and we will cover them in a video called Default Settings and Templates. And the last button here for the folder settings is the display rules. So it's the display rule for this folder, and you can activate them here, and then you can choose a comparison. Could say I want to have this folder shown on greater or equal daily charts. And what that will do is it will apply a rule to this folder and only show the contents of this folder on daily or greater charts. So we automatically have them hidden now here on the 240-minute chart. We also see that the display rule here gets a red background because the display rule is not fulfilled by this chart. You can still override it here, so if you still want to see something, you can click here. But the default setting whenever the chart recalculates will be that the elements in this folder will be all automatically hidden. And then we have a 10,000 tick chart here, and a tick chart will be orange for this rule because a rule on a time-based chart cannot be compared to a tick chart. So in this case it is incompatible, so it will be orange, and in doubt the objects will be shown. But nonetheless you can always hide something. So if you want to hide the folder here, you can click on the hide icon, and this stuff is of course also saved, so these objects will never be shown on this chart. And the last setting before we wrap up this video is the global display and the global hide buttons. And there are two buttons because you can have a mixture of hidden and displayed drawing objects, and if you click here then you will see all the drawing objects and it becomes orange, and orange means that it is still saving the previous state of all the display attributes for the drawing objects. So as long as this is orange, you could click it again and kind of go back to how it was before, and it stays orange until you change something here, because then it gets mixed up and you can't restore the previous state. And that works for the hide and also for the show button the same way, just in the reverse.